This is a Disad debate. Ooh, starting now. Resolve: the United States federal government to pass legislation establishing maximum contaminant levels for PFAS in drinking water supplies at 1 part per trillion standard for the total concentration. Sum. Funding. Plan is part of a $1.8 billion max funds amount based off of funds that have already been allocated in the EPA budget. Enforcement. Combination of EPA regulating federal offenders with penalties. Federal standards regarding water pollutants are also to be enforced by state environmental agencies and state and local penalties. Penalties against legal entities. Violations include withdrawals of federal funding and legal prosecution of the municipality. For federal entities, penalties fall under the Water Pollution Control Act. For non-government entities, penalties include a fine of 50% of cost of remediation plus any profit made off pollution. In addition, maximum 3 years jail sentence in state, local, or federal prison. PFAS designated as a hazardous substance by setting an enforceable maximum contaminant level applies it to CWA and FWPCA, applying present penalties and enforcement systems.
You only had 15 seconds.
I only spent 15 seconds on that. I don't know what you're talking about.
You only Did I just hear your name?
I did hear my name.
Did I just hear your name? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Uniqueness. Trump water policies reinvigorated federalism. Status quo is Goldilocks for states' rights. Snell and Romer 2020. Trump administration delivered clarity to the regulatory scheme, offering the principles of cooperative federalism. This rule strikes a reasonable and appropriate balance between federal and state waters and carries out Congress's overall objective to restore and maintain the integrity of the nation's water in a manner that preserves the traditional sovereignty of states over water resources. It is the policy of Congress to recognize, preserve, and protect the primary responsibilities and rights of states to prevent, reduce pollution, to use water resources. States now have a clear opportunity to tailor their regulatory programs for non-federal waters. The CWA rule promises to result in a more effective and efficient regulatory program. Link. Affirmative plan violates federalism. National environmental policies discourage state action and exclude states from regulatory policies. Algeria 7. The adoption of a given federal standard may send a signal that discourages protective state regulations. The federal floor may become a ceiling. There are numerous examples of state legislation designed to prevent state environmental agencies from adopting regulatory standards that are more stringent than federal rules. The existence of a signaling effect that reduces the level of state regulations could reduce the net benefits provided by federal regulations. Federal government encroachments on states' roles hurt federalism and disempowers states. Hawkins 20. Federal government taking over many rules designed to states. Benefits of a weaker federal government is need of each state are more easily managed. State controls also empower states to make tough decisions for their own well-being rather than hope that federal government will see the state problem as a priority. A strong government empowers citizens. Overreaching federal government limits this ability. Federal government oversteps and limits state political power. Gaylord 13. Old saying goes, all politicals are local, yet in our federal system there's supposed to be a balance. Federal government power is not unlimited. State governments plays a critical role in all those areas that are not left exclusively to the federal government. As a result, state politics are extraordinarily important because states are charged with protecting their welfare, safety, and health for their citizens. 20 states filed suit against the federal government, yet even federal supremacy lurks in the background, ready to limit the reach of state political power. Moving on to impact. American federalism is modeled. It solves international civil wars. Gabler's 95. The bitter harvest of the First and Second World Wars made clear that celebration of the nation-state can lead to Nazism, Stalinism, to war, genocide, and to totalitarism. I don't even know how to say half of these words. World leaders scrambled to retrace the still collapsing colonial imperial transition structures, new federal and confederal transnational structures. Cut the card there. The affirmative is simply violating federalism, and American federalism is modeled. It solves international civil wars like Calvert's 95 says. They're simply violating the rights of states there with the passing of their affirmative plan. Moving on to federalism prevents civil conflicts from escalating to global war. Levoti 09. Cross-national studies have shown that federalism minimizes violent conflict, but stifles development of rebellions, moderates politics by expanding the opportunity for victory. Federalism reduces the level of ethnic violence. Groups at the local level can influence many the issues that matter to them. Broad empirical studies support claims that power sharing can foster peaceful accommodation and prevent violent conflicts. It builds long-term support to peaceful solutions and undermines opposed to militant action. Judge, the affirmative plan can simply not work because it violates federalism. And with that said, I only see a negative ballot. Thank you.
Okay. I have what, 4 minutes
I wish
to
I had
destroy
read
your
this card
case?
before.
What part of it?
Just this part of the impact part.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
This is how you read your cards.
Are you ready? Judge? Judge, please? Judge? Okay. Starting now. I'd like to point out one of my plan planks, enforcement. It says that federal standards regarding water pollutants are to be enforced by state environmental agencies and state and local offenders. Now, I'll talk about that later in my turn, but I'd like to say that has been out there since the beginning of this round in the 1AC. Then also, the Biden $1 trillion infrastructure bill, we would have seen the impacts of federalism by now. It was passed a week or two ago, and since the uniqueness card from the negative team was from early 2020, we can see the impacts. We would have seen that from the Biden administration already. So there's no link to our plan because we either A, would have seen the impacts by now, or B, there's no impacts at all. Starting off, DOD circumvents states and states advocate for federal leadership. DOD circumvents state law. Empirics prove states advocating for federal leadership. AP 19. Because EPA has yet to set any formal PFAS regulations, an increasing number of state agencies are creating their own. In cases where states already acted, the military is resisting. The Department of Defense is refusing to comply with state laws. The chemicals do not appear on a list of hazardous substances. That's their way of fighting back. States hit by PFAS contamination say they want the EPA to create a nationwide standard, boost legal efforts. If it were on the federal list, it would tremendously help. Judge, the affirmative plan does not impede federalism at all. States that have passed PFAS laws are being taken to court by the DOD because they don't want to follow the state law. This is only lengthening the issue. These states are advocating for a federal standard to solve the issues with the Department of Defense. Then, federal standard boosts healthy federalism. PFAS standards boost healthy federalism, give state power of local enforcement and federal-state dialogue. Glamos 11. State enforcement of federal law as both a unique model of enforcement and a unique form of state power. Enforcement authority can serve as a potent means of state influence. Then, federal environmental standards fuel healthy cooperation between the states and the EPA. Cothers 19. The new EPA supported state environmental agencies in enforcement programs, implementation, and press for more aggravated use of formal enforcement orders. EPA regional officers can offer technical support to state environmental staff in difficult cases. The state-federal relationship can clearly be fractious, but even with today's greater partisan divisions on the environment, there is more collaboration than conflict. The primacy and potency of state environmental enforcement is essential to effective implementation of environmental law. So, Judge, just to go over what I said, first of all, the DOD is currently circumventing state law, and these states are advocating for a federal standard, federal leadership. They want our plan to go into place. Then, by putting in this plan, it'll boost healthy federalism because the EPA will be working with the state and local enforcement. So it will make them communicate, and it'll work because, once again, it will fuel healthy cooperation between the states and the EPA. Thank you. You have a 5-minute block.
I do.
You do have a 5-minute block. And I have a minute and 30-second 1AR. God.
You just said 4 minutes. Yeah. I don't want to read that.
By reading cards in the 2 and C, that's abusive and round.
That's not, though. That's the 2 and C. You can't read cards in the 2 and C. I don't know if I want to go there.
I think the reason is exception with the DM running and what that's
taking prep time? Just keep going.
No. Am I supposed to time my prep time? Who? Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Okay, have the time off. Hold on to the impact. Okay. I might be ready. Okay, I'm not gonna start with that.
Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Biden is restoring power to the states for hurdles remain. Sagel 21. Barriers to federal action under the Biden administration, a depleted civil service, multiple crises from COVID-19, and a hostile Supreme Court and federal judiciary. In this context, subnationals can be force multipliers. Trump's administration's least likely legacy is genuinely robust and pervasive subnational climate action. Faced with federal hostility, subnationals banded together to challenge nearly every Trump-era climate action and racked up an impressive win record. States have succeeded in defending many programs, from intelligence asserting a range of federal preemption, and federal constitutional claims. Federal action should focus on strengthening and engaging with the subnational network. The Biden executive orders do address these issues, but in a limited fashion, focused initially on processes rather than substantive expansion on authorities. This sort of formal commitment would confirm there's no legal or policy question as to whether subnationals should act. Federal legislators should pay attention to negative impact policies can have on federalism. Davis 14. Federal legislators should pay attention to the impact of the decisions on other levels of the federal system. We urge national policymakers to think twice before dwelling in the state. Such conditions become unreasonably demanding. Policymakers should do their best to stay at the heart of a healthy system of federalism. And the affirmative argues that there is a. Can you like not? The affirmative.
You're at 3:30.
Okay. The affirmative.
Stop.
Area, or if there was someone in our building who we couldn't find or identify. So at this time, going to the